I'd been dating Lucas Lane for 10 years, and I was ready to get married. I'd baked the cake myself, lit the candles, and asked him, "Lucas, today's our 10th anniversary. Will you marry me?" Lucas looked at me, silent for a long moment before saying, "Let's wait until the company's stable." I insisted, "I want to get married this year. I'll cover the 10 license fee. All you have to do is make time to go to the courthouse with me." But Lucas glared at me impatiently. "Chloe, stop being unreasonable. The company's in the middle of a critical funding round. I don't have time to think about marriage. Can you just stop pushing me?" I nodded. "Then I'll marry someone else." Lucas scoffed. 10 years we'd gone to the same school, worked at the same company. He never thought I'd actually follow through on a threat like that. But by the time I walked down the aisle with the man who'd been pursuing me, Lucas was there, his eyes red and swollen, begging in a broken voice, "Chloe, don't marry him." Lucas and I had been high school classmates and desk partners. He'd confessed his feelings to me the day our college entrance exams ended. And I'd said yes immediately. I'd had a crush on him for years. We got into the same university and were the school's golden couple. After graduation, Lucas started his own business, while I chose to get a master's degree in finance to help him with his career. And that's how we ended up together for 10 years. I'd actually brought up marriage right after I finished my master's. Back then, he'd turned me down, saying the company was in crisis and he couldn't give me the life I deserved. So I waited another 6 years. During that time, I never asked him about marriage again. I wanted to wait until he was ready to propose to me on his own. 3 days earlier, at the company team building event, I'd had a little too much to drink and made an excuse to take a break by the stairwell. That's where I heard Lucas talking to the company's CEO. "You and Chloe have been together almost 10 years, right? When are you two getting married?" Lucas was smoking and didn't say anything. The CEO pressed on, "You don't want to get married? 10 years and no ring. Are you thinking about breaking up?" Then I heard Lucas's voice. "I see her at work. I see her at home. If we get married now, I can see the rest of my life stretching out in front of me, and it's just more of the same. I'm scared I'll regret it." That's when I realized, while I'd been dreaming of building a happy, perfect family with him, Lucas was terrified of regretting marrying me. Our 10th anniversary was my last chance to give him an out, to ask him to marry me. But his answer was the same as it had always been, just one mention of marriage. And he snapped, "Chloe, if you can find another man to marry, then go ahead. Just stop nagging me about it every single day." But I'd only asked twice. Lucas left, and I cried over that cake all night. By the time I came to my senses, the sun was already up. I wiped my tears, opened WhatsApp, and messaged someone I hadn't talked to in a long time. "Want to get married at the courthouse tomorrow." He replied almost instantly, "Did you break up with Lucas?" I wrote back, "Are you going to marry me or not? If not, I'll ask someone else." He said, "Right now, grab your driver's license and birth certificate and come downstairs. I'll pick you up. You have 10 minutes to change your mind." My eyes were red and puffy, but I made up my mind to burn all my bridges. "Okay," I replied. After we got married, I went back to the apartment I shared with Lucas, packed up all my things, and moved into the condo I'd bought 4 years earlier. That night, Lucas called. He was angry when he saw all my things were gone. "Chloe, when did you become so unreasonable? I already explained why I can't get married right now. Can you just stop pushing me?" I said, "I'm not pushing you, Lucas. If you don't want to get married, don't." I just did. And I didn't care if the name on my marriage certificate wasn't Lucas Lane. Lucas didn't say anything. I hung up the phone and buried my face in my knees. I wanted to tell him, getting married at the courthouse only takes 10 minutes. It's not like I was asking him to walk to the gallows. 3 minutes later, he called again. I knew this time he'd be trying to sweet-talk me into coming back, but I didn't answer. Just then, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and before I could say a word, he pulled me close by the back of my neck and kissed me. After 10 years with Lucas, we'd known each other like we knew ourselves. Now a foreign scent filled my nose, and my phone buzzed incessantly on the counter. Lucas calling over and over. My heart raced, and my fitness watch beeped at the elevated heart rate. It wasn't attraction, it was nerves, fear, and something else I couldn't name. He saw the name flashing on my phone screen, but he didn't stop. "What are you doing here?" I asked. Breathless, he wrapped an arm around my waist. I tried to pull away, but he said, "What do you think Lucas will do when he finds out you married me?" My eyelashes fluttered, and my hands fell to my sides. It felt like a farewell ritual. From this moment on, my body and my heart belonged to someone else. When he pulled away, he pressed a soft kiss to my lips. "Don't blame me. You had 10 years with him. This is the only way I can feel like you're really mine. Good night, Mrs. Chase." I fell asleep and didn't hear those words. I also didn't see the message Lucas had said to my phone on the nightstand. "Chloe, let's both calm down and talk about this." The next morning, my legs ached so bad I could barely walk. He dropped me off at work an hour late. Lucas had already started the morning meeting, and when he saw me standing outside the conference room, he just gave me a cold glance. "Late. Deduct the perfect attendance bonus." I nodded and calmly started to walk into the room, but Lucas said, "Susie's doing a great job. From now on, she'll run the morning meetings." Susie smiled at me smugly. "Chloe, let me handle this. You go rest." I knew she had a crush on Lucas, fresh out of college. She had no resistance to a handsome, wealthy, and charming young vice president. More than once, she dropped hints and asked me, "Chloe, you and Mr. Lane have been together for so long, why haven't you gotten married yet?" Lucas had overheard her several times, and he'd mistaken her questions for me nagging him about marriage. But he never heard the rest of what she said. "I heard couples who date too long without getting married are the most likely to break up. Mr. Lane's so handsome and successful, girls are always throwing themselves at him. If you don't marry him soon, Chloe, you're really taking a risk." The meaning was clear. After the meeting, I was about to leave when a coworker looked at me in surprise and said, "Chloe, no wonder you were late today. You must have had a busy night." That's when I noticed my scarf had slipped, revealing the faint bruises on my neck. Lucas was going over the meeting notes with Susie, but his eyes snapped to my neck the second he heard what my coworker said. It was a reminder. There was no going back now. I pulled my scarf tighter and said to my coworker, "It's just an allergy." Lucas looked away. I went back to the administrative office and sat down, thinking about one thing: quitting. Once I'd made up my mind, I went to Lucas's office. When Lucas saw me come in, his face softened. Thought I was going to apologize. "I told Susie to go get you some allergy medicine. Stop being petty. Once the funding round is over, I'll think about getting married." So marriage was just something he needed to think about. No consideration for what I wanted. "Mr. Lane, I'm resigning," I said flatly. Lucas's face fell instantly. "Chloe, we can talk about this at home. Do you have to bring your personal issues to work?" My chest ached. "I'm not bringing personal issues to work. Mr. Lane, I'm getting married." Lucas flew into a rage and slammed his capybara water bottle against the floor, shattering it. "Chloe, you only came to this company to push me into marriage, didn't you?" I pushed down my own anger and looked at him calmly. "Lucas, I am getting married, just not to you." Lucas clearly didn't believe me. He thought this was just another one of my tactics to force him into marriage. Susie walked in and froze when she saw the broken capybara water bottle on the floor. "I'll submit my resignation letter to Human Resources," I said, and turned to leave without another word. I was far calmer on the surface than I felt inside. After 10 years with Lucas, he was like blood in my veins, part of every part of me. I knew if I pushed hard enough, he'd marry me out of a sense of duty, but I didn't want that. We'd spent 3 years of high school secretly crushing on each other, too shy to say anything. In college, we'd loved each other fiercely, but I didn't want to become the plain rice grain on his collar, something he'd grown tired of and resented. 10 years, neither of us wanted to let go. So even though he didn't want to marry me, he also didn't want to set me free. That's fine. If his heart had grown tired first, then my body would leave first. After all, nothing leaves a deeper scar than loss. I pulled myself together and started writing my resignation letter. Over the years, I'd saved a lot of money. I'd also been investing in stocks and mutual funds, and they'd been doing well. I even ran a social media account with a decent following. I didn't need a job to survive. But Lucas had never known any of this. He'd always been so wrapped up in his work. He'd always told me he supported whatever I wanted to do. At first, I'd thought that meant he supported me unconditionally, but now I realized it just meant he didn't care enough to pay attention to what I liked. I finished writing the letter and printed it out. But before I could take it to Human Resources, Susie walked in. "Chloe, you shouldn't push Mr. Lane so hard. The company's in the middle of this critical funding round. And he's always put work first. You know him better than anyone." I looked at the capybara water bottle in Susie's hand. "The one he broke, was that a gift from you? A matching set?" I should have noticed sooner. Lucas's office had slowly filled with little trinkets that didn't match his style. Once, I'd asked him about a wooden stress reliever on his desk, and he'd just smiled and said, "Just some silly thing a kid gave me." Susie tensed up immediately. "No, Chloe. It was just a birthday present. I liked it so much I got one for myself too." She couldn't help her crush on Lucas. But she'd never crossed the line with him. She'd just been waiting for us to break up. I looked away and didn't say anything. Susie reluctantly set the allergy medicine on my desk. "Mr. Lane approved a month of paid leave for you. He said I'll take over your duties while you're gone. It worked out perfectly." "Okay," I said calmly. After Susie left, I took my resignation letter to Human Resources, so I'd get a month of paid leave, and then come back to finalize my departure. For 10 years, my life had revolved around Lucas and the company. I'd thought leaving would break my heart, but when I walked out the front door, I only glanced back once. Just then, I got a message from him. "What about having the wedding in a month? I'll send you a few hotels and wedding styles to look at." My mind went blank. All I could reply was, "Whatever you like is fine." When I got home, I tried to keep myself busy so I wouldn't get lost in memories. I was looking at stocks when a voice came from behind me. "Thinking about buying this one?" "Yeah, this group has a major scandal that's being covered up. Barring any surprises, it'll collapse tomorrow. I'd recommend buying their competitor instead." Oh, I hadn't realized he knew so much about stocks. When I turned around, Ethan was leaning over me. "I thought you were going to work." I still wasn't used to how affectionate he was. After he kissed me, I looked away. He'd asked for a spare key to my condo that morning, and I'd had no reason to say no. I did. I went to ask for leave. Ethan pulled out the wedding planner's proposals and showed them to me. I had to admit, being with Ethan was easy. He was incredibly perceptive, and could tell which styles I liked just by how long my eyes lingered on them. After we picked a wedding planner, he dragged me to look at new home renovations. We spent the whole afternoon going through options, and he only stopped when he saw how tired I was. I checked my phone and saw a message from Human Resources. After I left, they'd given Lucas my resignation letter, and he'd flown into a rage and torn the hard copy to pieces. I sent an electronic copy to Human Resources from my work email, and this time Lucas approved it. He sent me a message. "You're quitting just to push me. This is only going to make me angrier." He was convinced I was just throwing a tantrum, but that was fine. Time would tell. I'd thought I'd spend weeks wallowing in sadness, but Ethan didn't give me the chance. He took time off work to take me house hunting, pick out wedding plans, and go shopping for decorations. He even helped me with my social media videos and gave me great advice. Then he took me home to meet his parents for dinner. In less than a week, we'd set a firm wedding date. I couldn't help but compare him to Lucas. Lucas was incredibly disciplined. He never indulged in anything fun, and even the things I loved, he'd talk me out of. But Ethan was always asking me, "What do you like?" During this time, updates about Lucas kept coming in from a few coworkers I was still friends with, like how Susie had messed up a data report and couldn't fix it, and the board had torn Lucas apart, or how Lucas had gotten drunk. Susie had taken him home, and she'd left crying. I stared blankly at the messages from my coworker, and when Ethan came out of the shower, he saw them over my shoulder. "You didn't tell him about the wedding," I said. "I wrote it in my resignation letter." Ethan dried his hair, his eyes twinkling as he smiled at me. "What do you think, Mrs. Chase? Do you think he actually read it?" I hesitated. Maybe he had, but he probably just thought it was another one of my tricks to force him into marriage. "Speak of the devil," Lucas called. It was the first time he'd contacted me since that night a week ago. I hesitated, but Ethan pressed the answer button and mouthed, "I'll go make dinner." Ethan was an amazing cook. He was picky about food, and most restaurants just didn't measure up. I could cook too, so we had a system. When he cooked, I washed the dishes, and when I cooked, he helped prep and then cleaned up everything else. As for housework, we'd both agreed to hire a cleaner. Lucas, on the other hand, only knew how to work. He'd wait for me to make dinner, eat, then go back to work while I cleaned up. I said into the phone, "Is there something you need, Mr. Lane?" On the other end, Lucas was breathing heavily, like he'd been drinking. "Chloe, if you're not mad anymore, just come home. We've been together for so long, are you really going to freeze me out forever?" I didn't say anything. He went on, his voice softening, "I know you want to get married. It's not that I don't want to marry you. I just haven't made up my mind yet. Give me a little more time." I wanted to ask him, 10 years isn't enough. But I knew it was pointless. Someone poked my finger, and I turned around. Ethan had come back into the room, and he was slipping a ring onto my finger. It had a huge pink diamond in the center. I remembered seeing it sold at a charity gala auction a week earlier. Now I realized he'd bought it the night we got married. He smiled at me and mouthed the words, "Happy wedding, Mrs. Chase." In that moment, I had no more doubts. I said to Lucas, "Mr. Lane, I'm already married. You can take all the time you need to think about things, but none of it has anything to do with me anymore. I'll come back to finalize my resignation when my leave is over. And I hope you'll stop contacting me." There was a loud crash of breaking glass on the other end, followed by Susie's scream. She grabbed the phone, her voice shaking. Chloe, Mr. Lane's stomach is acting up. He won't go to the hospital," I said quickly. "The antacid is in the second drawer under the living room TV, and don't let him take antibiotics after drinking alcohol." Susie found the medicine and sighed in relief. "Thanks, Chloe." I hummed in response and was about to hang up when she asked, "Chloe, are you really married?" I glanced at Ethan and said, "Yes, my husband's right here. Do you want to talk to him?" No, that's okay." Susie hung up the phone in a panic. Ethan tilted my chin up and smiled, a hint of jealousy in his voice. "My wife remembers everything about him, doesn't she?" It wasn't that I remembered. I'd been the one who'd run that entire household. Lucas had never paid attention to the little details of life. I didn't know if he'd remembered what I said, and I didn't care if Susie believed me. No one at the company asked me if I was really married anyway. I didn't contact Lucas again, and he didn't contact me. He knew I'd bought a condo, but he didn't know which building, floor, or unit number. One night, the security guard told me he'd seen Lucas's car parked outside, and someone had asked him where I lived, but he'd refused to say. To protect my privacy, almost 3 weeks later, I talked to Human Resources and went back to the company early to finalize my resignation. I didn't bring any wedding invitations, and I didn't plan on inviting anyone. For 10 years, Lucas and I had been inseparable. Everyone I knew was from work. Now that we were over, there was no reason to bring any of them into my new life. As I walked out after finishing the paperwork, I ran into Lucas and Susie. Susie hesitated and said, "Mr. Lane, we just got an invitation from Mr. Chase of Chase Group. His wedding is in 2 weeks, and he'd like you to attend." Lucas's voice was hoarse. "Pick out a gift and send it for me." Susie opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but closed it again. I'd known Ethan would send him an invitation. I tried to step back and avoid them, but Lucas rounded the corner and ran right into me. The moment I saw him, it was like a stone had been dropped into a calm lake. But the ripples faded quickly, and the water was still again. It had been almost 3 weeks, and Lucas looked different. He had stubble on his face. His tie was wrinkled, and his eyes were red like he hadn't been sleeping. Oh right, he had chronic insomnia and anxiety and trouble sleeping. I'd always kept lavender sleep candles at home, but I'd almost run out before I left. He'd probably used them all up by now. When he saw me, Lucas opened his mouth to speak, but then composed himself and adjusted his tie. "If you've come to your senses and want to come back, just get settled. Everything will be the same as before." I held up the box of my things and said, "You're mistaken. Mr. Lane, I'm here to finalize my resignation. Since you gave me a month of leave, I thought I'd get this out of the way early, mostly because I had a wedding to plan, and I didn't want to have to come back later." Lucas's face darkened. "Chloe, you've been at this company for years. Do you realize that once you leave, you can never come back?" Company policy stated that former employees couldn't be rehired. I was about to say something when Susie suddenly exclaimed, "Chloe, that ring is beautiful. When did you get it?" I was caught off guard. Lucas's eyes snapped to the ring on my left hand, and his face turned to stone. Before I could react, he grabbed my wrist. "What is this?" I frowned and was about to pull away when a voice came from behind me. "Mr. Lane." Lucas let go of my hand immediately, his face returning to a professional mask. "Mr. Chase, long time no see. What brings you to our office today? I don't believe our companies have had any business dealings in quite some time." Ethan scratched his nose. "Don't worry, Mr. Lane. This is personal. My wife came to finalize her resignation today, and I'm here to pick her up." Lucas froze. Ethan calmly looked down at the things that had fallen out of my box on the floor. "Are these yours?" I glanced at them. They were just little trinkets. Nothing important. "It's fine. Just throw them away. I'll buy new ones." I turned back to Lucas, my voice calm. "I really am married. Mr. Lane, this is my husband. We hope you'll be able to make it to our wedding. We won't take up any more of your time. Let's go." "Ethan." Lucas's eyes blazed with fury. He snatched the invitation from Susie's hand and finally saw our names printed on it. But I was already walking away, my arm linked through Ethan's. This was his company, and he'd always prided himself on keeping personal and professional life separate. He wouldn't make a scene here. I got into Ethan's car. He didn't start the engine right away. Instead, he leaned over and buckled my seatbelt for me, his eyes twinkling. "You really let him go that easily, Mrs. Chase. Whether I want to or not, I have to." Ethan didn't look satisfied with my answer. He grinned and said, "But Mr. Lane looked pretty devastated, didn't he?" I didn't reply. Too little. Too late. If Lucas had really cared, he wouldn't have hesitated to marry me for 10 years. He was just used to having me around. He wasn't used to the woman who'd always followed him suddenly belonging to someone else. But I was ready to move on. I turned to look at him. "I heard you had a girlfriend in college that you date D for 3 years. When you broke up, you got drunk for 3 days straight, and you didn't date anyone for 8 years after that. Was that hard for you?" It was old news, something I'd heard from people at work years ago. Ethan had always seemed so put together, so I'd been surprised to hear he'd been that reckless over a girl. "Is my wife jealous?" Ethan looked delighted. I turned to look out the window. "Ethan, we'll have our own 10 years too." Lucas and I had been passionate once, but that passion had faded into routine. What would happen with Ethan in 10 years? Ethan took my hand. "More than that. The Chase family doesn't believe in divorce. We'll have 20 years, 30, a lifetime." I looked at him seriously. "Ethan, if one day you get bored of being with me, just tell me. I'm not the kind of person who clings on. I'll leave." I couldn't deny that I'd started to develop feelings for him over the past few weeks. But even so, I couldn't help but wonder, what if the same thing happened to us? Promises mean nothing compared to actions. "Mrs. Chase, time will tell." He squeezed my hand tightly. It reminded me of our second meeting 4 years earlier. He'd said to me, "Ms. Carter, you've been building this company with Mr. Lane for years and you're still not married. It must be because he's so boring and predictable, right? Have you ever considered getting a new boyfriend?" I'd just rolled my eyes at him. He'd sounded like a playboy who hit on every girl he met. But in 4 years, I'd never seen him with a girlfriend. He was always with his male assistant. Of course, maybe I just hadn't been paying attention, but I didn't care. My heart had belonged to Lucas for 10 years. I wasn't going to give it to someone else just because I liked them a little. Even if we were married, it was still just a responsibility at this point. The wedding plans were all set. I'd ignored all of Lucas's calls in the meantime, but the night before the wedding, he found my apartment. Ethan and I had just come back from the grocery store. Ethan was carrying all the grocery bags. And I was holding the fried chicken and ice cream he'd bought to cheer me up. When he saw Lucas, Ethan took a bite of my ice cream, grabbed all the bags, and went inside without even inviting Lucas in just 1 month. Lucas had lost so much weight his cheeks were hollow. His eyes were red and swollen as he looked at me. "Chloe, don't marry him. Marry me instead. We'll go to the courthouse tomorrow," I said. "Mr. Lane, Ethan and I already got married a month ago, the day you refused to marry me. If he didn't want to marry me, that was fine. I'd marry someone else." Lucas's face turned white, and he swayed on his feet. He gritted his teeth and said, "Chloe, do you even know him? Do you know what kind of person he is? You spent 10 years with Mui. Would you suddenly choose him? Have you been cheating on me this whole time?" I slapped him across the face. "Lucas, you're insulting me." My hand stung. I'd hit him hard, but I said clearly, "You wouldn't marry me. Why can't I marry someone else?" Lucas shouted, "You've been with me for 10 years. You wanted to marry me. How could you possibly want to marry him?" I smiled. "Because he wanted to marry me. He's wanted to marry me for 4 years. So I said yes. I wasn't some unwanted woman. I'd had plenty of suitors over the years. I'd just chosen to be with Lucas." I turned to leave, but Lucas grabbed my hand. "Chloe, do you love him?" There was a flicker of hope in his eyes, like he was clinging to one last chance. I pried his fingers off my hand one by one, and said slowly, "Lucas, we were together for 10 years. I saw you at work. I saw you at home. Do you have any idea how it feels to look at someone and know exactly what the rest of your life will be like? That it'll never change, never get better." Lucas's face turned white. He let go of my hand. You heard that?" Yes, I'd heard it. And that night, I'd thought about everything, about how I'd devoted my entire life to him. I'd taken care of him at home, doing all the things he couldn't or wouldn't do. At work, when he said he didn't want me to outshine him, I'd stepped back and become his assistant. And for what? For him to say that looking at me made him feel like his life was over before it had even started. Love. Was love devoting 10 years of my life to him, waiting for a proposal that never came, only to be told I was nagging him? I didn't want to say another word to Lucas. Every second I spent with him felt exhausting, more exhausting than anything I'd ever felt. "I'm getting married tomorrow. Lucas, I hope you'll leave me alone from now on," Lucas said. "Chloe, let me explain." But I'd already walked inside. Ethan had been standing behind the door the whole time. He put out his cigarette and said, "I'll handle this." Then he went outside and stood between me and Lucas. "Ethan, you lowlife. You took advantage of her when she was vulnerable." Lucas snarled. I was shaking. Yes, this was my revenge. In this moment, I finally felt like it was really over between Lucas and me. I heard Ethan's voice. 4 years ago, when your company was on the brink of bankruptcy, do you really think you saved it? Let me tell you something. If Chloe hadn't shown up at my office in the pouring rain, begging me to drop out of the bidding, you never would have gotten that contract. You'd be bankrupt right now. Lucas's eyes widened in shock. I closed my eyes. 4 years earlier, the company had been in crisis. Lucas had just been a junior partner back then. If they'd lost that contract, the company would have gone under. And Lucas would have been millions of dollars in debt. Ethan had been his biggest competitor. Business wasn't just about skill, it was about connections. Ethan was the heir to the Chase fortune. And that contract had been meant for Chase Group. The proposal was supposed to go straight to the chairman. I'd taken the proposal to the chairman myself, and that's when I'd found out Ethan was his son. Working under a fake name. There was no way Lucas could have competed against that. For Ethan, that project had just been a practice run, but for Lucas, it had been everything. I'd refused to give up. I'd drunk an entire bottle of strong Chinese grain liquor in front of Ethan just to get 5 minutes alone with the chairman to present our proposal. After I'd finished, Ethan had just grinned at his dad and said, "Dad, this project's boring and easy. She wants it that bad. Let her have it." He'd dropped out of the bidding. And that's how Lucas had gotten his big break. He'd built the company up from there, gone through several rounds of funding, and become the vice president he was today. But that was also the day Ethan had fallen for me. He'd known I'd been with Lucas for 10 years. He'd never made a move, never let anyone think there was something between us. But for 4 years, he'd never dated anyone else. And whenever there was a rumor about him seeing someone, he'd always text me to explain. I'd never responded, but I'd known he was serious. I don't know how long passed before Lucas left. When Ethan came back inside, I was wiping away tears. He just pulled me into a quiet hug, his voice soft and vulnerable. I know you don't love me yet, Mrs. Chase, but that's okay. We have all the time in the world. You can get to know me, get used to me, and see that I'm better than Lucas ever was. I laughed a little and pushed him away so I could look at him. Ethan, doesn't it bother you that I spent 10 years with him? He cupped my face in his hands. Of course not. My wife spent 10 years walking down the wrong path. Now she's finally found her way home. I couldn't be happier. I couldn't tell him I loved him yet, but I hugged him tightly and said, "You don't have to worry, Mr. Chase. I know what the wrong path looks like now. I won't go back." We both loved the wrong people, but that was just a choice we'd made. Making a mistake wasn't the worst thing in the world. The worst thing was staying on the wrong path just because you'd already walked so far. And sometimes, you had to make a mistake to find the right way. The wedding went off without a hitch. Lucas showed up anyway, his eyes red and swollen. Ignoring the whispers and stares from the guests, a lot of people knew who I was, the woman who'd been with Lucas for 10 years. And now I was married to the heir to the Chase fortune. I raised my glass to him calmly and wished him a life full of hope and excitement, a life where he never felt like the days were just blending together. Lucas Lane's epilogue. By the 10th year with Chloe, we were practically the same person. She knew me better than I knew myself. I'd lift a hand, and she'd know what shirt I wanted to wear. I'd take a step, and she'd know where I was going. Once the company was stable, life became unbearably calm, until one day, a bright, bubbly new graduate walked into my office. She'd leave cute little toys on my desk. She'd smile and say, "Mr. Lane, have you ever done an escape room? Do you know how to play Among Us?" I found it charming. Chloe, on the other hand, only ever told me where I needed to be next, what time my video conference was, and which upscale takeout place she'd ordered dinner from. Everything was predictable, and it bored me to death. So I started paying more attention to Susie. I even told her a few times that Chloe was boring. Susie started trying even harder to find fun things to talk about. We never acted on it, but the newness of it all gave me a thrill I hadn't felt in years. So when Chloe brought up marriage, I recoiled. Was I really going to spend the rest of my life like this? I thought about it for a long time. Chloe had been with me for 10 years. She'd supported me through everything. I owed her a marriage. But right as I was about to give in, I found out Chloe had married someone else. In that moment, it felt like someone had ripped a rib out of my chest. The pain was unbearable. That night, I got drunk, and Susie drove me home. I could tell she had a crush on me. She couldn't hide it in her eyes, in the way she talked to me. Drunk, I asked her, "Do you like me?" But Susie's expression changed. She said, "I used to like you, Mr. Lane. But after I went to your apartment the other day, I don't anymore. Chloe was with you for 10 years. And you never married her. I know I could never be as good to you as she was. And I know I couldn't keep you interested forever. So I'm not going to like you anymore." She told me she'd gone to the apartment Chloe and I had shared for 6 years, even though Chloe had taken all her things. The apartment was still full of her. The fruits and vegetables in the fridge, each labeled with their expiration dates. The half-empty closet, the shoes lined up perfectly on the shoe rack, the books and files in the study, all neatly labeled. There was nothing of Chloe's left. But she was everywhere. She didn't think she could ever take Chloe's place, and she knew that in 2 years, I'd get bored of her too, and move on to someone else. So she decided to stop liking me. We were just boss and employee now. When I got back to the apartment, I looked around. I'd bought this place right after Chloe graduated. Back then, I had thought about marrying her. I just thought I didn't have enough money to give her the life she deserved. But somewhere along the way, I'd lost my way. I regretted being so weak. I regretted hesitating, but it was too late. On Chloe's wedding day, I saw Chairman Chase. He looked at Chloe like she was the daughter he'd always wanted. And Ethan looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I used to look at her like that, but somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten how. I'd just gotten used to her being there. Used to her taking care of everything. Chloe had wished me happiness, but I knew that no matter who I met for the rest of my life, I would never forget her. I'd lost everything. Ethan Chase's epilogue. I was jealous of Lucas Lane, because he had an amazing woman, but Lucas was jealous of me, because I had a father who could give me everything. In college, I'd had a girlfriend. We'd been madly in love. I'd thought she was the one, but my father hadn't approved. He'd been in business for decades, and he'd seen right through her. So we'd made a deal. I'd hide my identity, start my own company without any help from him, and support the woman I loved. At first, things went well, but then I hit a huge setback. I thought about it for a month, and was about to go ask my father for help, but the woman I'd loved for 4 years left me as soon as she found out I was in trouble. She said she'd wasted 4 years on me, and I still couldn't give her the life she wanted. A woman's youth was short, she said, and she deserved better. I didn't beg her to stay, but I was heartbroken. It took me years to get over her, until I met Chloe. At first, I'd just found her interesting, but when I learned about her relationship with Lucas, I fell in love with her. I fell in love with the woman who'd loved someone else for 10 years. Who'd devoted her entire life to him without asking for anything in return. I was the heir to the Chase fortune. I'd had everything handed to me since the day I was born. Lucas Lane was a self-made man. He'd had nothing, but he'd had Chloe's heart. For 10 years, 10 whole years, sh.ed given him the best years of her life, and asked for nothing in return. It broke my heart, but I knew she loved him. They had 10 years together. I had my principles. I'd told her how I felt, but I would never interfere in their relationship. If she'd married Lucas, I would have been happy for her, but if things didn't work out between them, I wanted to be the first person she turned to, and I'd been right. Chloe and I were the same. We belonged together. We were the kind of people who loved deeply, and who deserved to be loved in return. I knew it would take her a long time to heal from Lucas, but I was patient. I knew that one day, she'd see that I was the right one for her, and then, she'd love me too.